Oh, hello, and welcome to another episode of Tamara Unfiltered. Still got my sunglasses on because I couldn't really sort out my face, but I'm here nonetheless, and I feel like that's what matters. Now, this week's show, I want to follow up a bit on the podcast I did about like the law of attraction and manifestation and stuff. I was talking about The Secret, and The Secret being the kind of book that led me onto the path of all of this stuff. And now I want to talk about some of the books afterwards and some of the things that have been really, really helpful to me, because I mentioned The Secret in particular. I mean, it's such a great book, but essentially it's very materialistic, and it's also very basic. It doesn't really get to the depths of what it actually is going to take. I think The Secret worked and sold so well because that thing where I talk about, instant gratification, it's a very real thing. People want that. They don't want to be told, oh, they've got to wait 10 years before something's going to become true. So The Secret did well because it kind of makes you think that you can have everything kind of in an instant. Now that is not the case, and this is someone who's now 17 years deep into the law of attraction. I can tell you it very much works, and you very much have a certain say and power over your life. However, it's not as simple as, oh, you think of what you want, you get what you want, and everything's great. It doesn't go that way. And I think, as I've tried to show you, previously, getting what you wish for is not always what you thought you wanted, and it's not always as great as you thought it would be. And the book I want to talk about really does a very good job of explaining that. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see I am holding up a very old copy. Again, another old book that's lost its cover, but this is How to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, I love this book, and I think this book is really important to talk about now because of the time of when this book was written. Now, this book was written in 1912, and it was written around the time of the Great Depression. But what this book proved, or tried to prove, was that even though we were going through the greatest depression, it was actually one of the most abundant times in terms of being able to make money, because, when everything's failing, there is obviously an opportunity to create answers to those failures. So this book was written around that time. Now, if you've got a tinfoil hat like me, you'll know he talks about a lot of the people that haven't really done very good in this world. I mean, they've done very good financially, and they are the elite, they are the powers that be. But I think at the time he wrote this book, he maybe wasn't aware of the power these people wielded. And actually, no, I think he was, because I think he references them because of what they were able to do at that time through using the techniques in this book. Now, the techniques in this book are based on the law of attraction, but it's a lot more in depth than The Secret was. And I think this is funny because this book, even though it's called How to Think and Grow Rich, it's probably the most spiritual book I have ever read in my life. This book really helped me to understand what it was actually going to take if I was going to change my life. Like I said, The Secret's very surface level. This really gets into the depths. Now, there's lots of chapters in this, and I'm not going to go into them too much, but I am going to just talk about one that's just popped out, which, funnily enough, is chapter 11. And this, because like I said, this book really introduced me to a lot of different things, but this in particular, chapter 11, it's called The Mystery of Sex Transmutation. This was my first introduction to understanding the power I wielded as a human. I had never really considered what was happening when I was having sex, the exchange that was occurring, which is a very big energetic exchange. And I never really made the connection how through me having sex so promiscuously was really damaging my ability to be able to manifest good things into my life. One, because I think on like a spiritual woo-woo level, not even on a spiritual woo-woo level, like scientific fact, you basically take on the DNA of any men you sleep with. And when you're taking on other people's DNA, you're probably going to start to feel a little bit crazy, right? And I think maybe that's where a lot of my mental health came from when I was younger. The fact that come from a very big trauma, or I had, instead of hiding away from that trauma, I just went on to become very promiscuous, and I think it definitely affected my mental health. But like I said, this book was the first introduction to starting to understand the power I did have, and like how to use it in a more productive fashion. Now, this book was really interesting because the way it spoke about sex transmutation, it kind of, he was doing this from a study. You have to remember, this book is like basically a study, scientific study, but he's taking it from a scientific point of view. And he basically discovered that men after the age of 40, and again, this book is very, it's not misogynistic, but it's very, it was the time it was written in, it's basically about men. But he discovered, or made the connection, that men over the age of 40 suddenly started finding success because they slowed down in their sex life. And the connection he made was the fact that because they were no longer ploughing their life force energy into another human, they were in fact storing up all that energy and then ploughing it into things like their business. And this is where people were starting to see massive financial growth. And so I really took this on board, and I ended up doing, I think it was like 2.5 years of celibacy, like intended celibacy, not the celibacy I'm doing now where I'm just like, I fucking hate men and don't care if I never have sex again. Like, I wanted to have sex and I wanted to be with men. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean. I wanted to do that, but I just knew I was giving away potential life force energy that I could be plowing into my business and such. So that's what I did. I went celibate. I stored up all my sexual energy. Honestly, that was probably the time when I saw the biggest jump in my life in terms of my success and my finances. And I really, till this day, attribute it to the fact that I stopped having sex. And the book, I can't even remember if it was this book, but there's like another book I got that really goes like deeper into this. But there's two ways you can go at this. You can either go at it to use your sexual energy, I'm talking about. You can either go at it from the way of like, you completely abstain, so you're storing up your energy for yourself, or you go at it with a partner who is happy to help you channel and is willing to get aligned with whatever it is you're trying to manifest. Because you can, I don't know if you've heard of sex magic. I think the guy who introduced this, Aleister Crowley, wasn't the best of guys, so I don't think we really listened to him too much about it. But you can basically do little rituals when you're having sex, and I mean, that makes it sound really like sadistic and weird. Like, you basically, like, you would be having sex, and at the point when you're both about to ejaculate, you would both focus on as a goal or an outcome. So for me, it might be my 20 million pounds, right? So I'd be getting my groove on with a guy just when we're about to bust a nut. We'd both see that 20 million pounds in our head and aim that sexual energy, that ejaculation, sorry, I've got to find better words. You would aim that, like physically, like not physically, like see in your mind that going towards your goal. You're plowing that energy into that. So there were two different ways to go about it, but I chose to abstain, and I honestly think it was probably I do think it was one of the best things I ever did in terms of helping me to level up. Now, again, I find myself where I'm involuntarily in a place where I'm not having sex. I say involuntarily, it's like I want it and I don't want it sort of thing. Like, the state of men at the moment has become so bad. I just don't want to lower myself, to be honest with you. It's just, I don't feel like there's anything worth out there, worth doing it with out there. So I'm abstaining because of that, not because I'm trying to level up financially or whatever. However, again, I'm seeing how much I'm getting done because I am like storing up all this sexual energy, which is a fuck ton of energy, because you have to look at it like this. If I went now and had sex, I ejaculate, hello eggs, he ejaculates, hello sperm. That is a human, potentially. Do you know how much it fucking takes to make a human? Do you look at humans, look at the energy that goes into them. Like, they're a lot, right? So if you're potentially, you're plowing, you're putting out that energy just willy-nilly, not even thinking about it, you're losing a lot of potential, right? And equally, if you're keeping it in, holding it to yourself, and intentionally directing it to other things, you will become so powerful. And I think that's, again, what's happening with me now. and like I said, you know, you don't always know what's right for you. I don't know why the universe has put me on a path where all the men are so flipping terrible, but it is my reality at the moment, is what it is. And it's pushed me to a place where I'm having to fling myself into work, but I've got the right amount of energy to do it, and it's just making such a difference to it. I mean, do you think if I had a boyfriend and I'd been up boning all night, I would be here now doing this podcast? No, I fucking wouldn't. So everything is relative. Anyway, this book in particular, it taught me a lot. And like I said, it was a very spiritual book because it made me understand there was a lot more to this law of attraction thing than just putting stuff out there. And this was the first thing that introduced me to the concept of, not that I wasn't a good person before, but actually being good for the benefit of yourself. I.e., you got to think of yourself as a magnet, right? And a mirror, essentially. Whatever you're putting out is going to come back to you. And so by putting out there, you know, goodness, being a good person, being someone who does good things in the world and doesn't like make it a worse place, that is actually really important to you, I think, being financially successful. And so does this guy, who is the man who wrote the book on how to get rich. Now, the only thing I have to compare this to is people I see in my life. I know a lot of people who, even though they might not do so well financially, they are always okay. Like myself, for instance. Like, I'm not actually rich, but there has never been a day when I've gone without. There has never been a day where the universe hasn't provided for me. And when I look at that and then look at people like my baby fathers, for instance, they financially live such a terrible existence. And I can't tell either of them because they would not have any of it. But I know it's because, from a spiritual perspective, they're not doing what they're supposed to do in the world. They're not doing anything with their money that they should be doing. The first thing I do before I do anything is make sure my children have everything. And then they never even consider their children. There has never been one day where they've ever phoned me and asked me, do you have enough food? Do the kids need anything? Are you okay? And I really think that affects their finances. Like, they're both of them just literally haven't got a pot to piss in. And I just, when I zoom out, I just think it's because you're cunts. It's because you don't look after what you're supposed to look after. Like, I don't think the universe is good to bad people. You might see on the surface level, like, bad people occasionally, like, having a good time. But in the essence, like, underneath it all, I just don't think they are. I don't think the universe is being good to them. And this is what I mean, like, my life at the moment doesn't feel so great, but, like, actually it is fucking great. Like, I know a lot of this is just down to bad mental health feelings because of perimenopausal shit. It's not actually my life. My life is a good, but like I said, I'm always provided for. But I see so often people who don't do right by the people they're supposed to, and then they just don't have, like, a good existence, and then they wonder why. I don't wonder. But again, like I said, people, you can't tell people this. They don't want to flip and hear it. Anyway, this book helped to teach me a lot of why my morals that I've always had are in fact important, and why still to this day, there's a lot of things I could be doing that would make me a lot of money, but I just don't want to do it because it would be at the sake of my morals, and it would, I don't know, I'd no longer be authentic. And I think authenticity is so important. In fact, here's this for interesting. When you read a lot of these books, they talk about love, and they talk about love being the highest possible frequency you can be on. And when you're in a state of love, you emit this, like, frequency, this divine frequency, and it's like the highest possible frequency. Do you know what actually is the highest possible frequency you could ever be on, and is the best place to be, and where you're going to attract the most good things into your life? It's actually authenticity. They measured it. Like, there's a chart and it shows. And do you know what glows you up and lights you up more than love? It's being authentic. Which is why I've got to stay true to myself. And which is, again, it's just another important thing this book taught me. I don't think it even understood that on that level at this time when it was written, but it did understand how being a good person, being true to yourself, was really going to be a contributing factor as to how well you do in this world. And do you know what sparked this whole podcast? I saw I saw somebody misquote something the other day and it really annoyed me because it just made the quote sound stupid. But it was basically saying, like, the man who does more work than he's paid for will be paid for more work than he does. But they misquoted it. But the quote was actually, a man who does more work than he's like being paid for will soon be paid for more work than he's doing. And that seems very, I don't even know, but if you actually think about that, that's so much deeper than that. And I've actually seen that in my life. When I started my businesses, a lot of you know what I do. One of my businesses, my main business in particular, that was started through giving stuff away. That was started because people needed this thing, and I was one of the only people that could provide it. And as much as, you know, wrongly or rightly, I just felt like I had to, and I would give a lot of stuff away, and I would genuinely do it from my heart. And I did that in a place where I didn't have much myself to be giving, but I just genuinely wanted to give because I wanted to help. And now, you know, 10 years on, I have a business that is, considering what it is, it thrives. Like it does really well. And I think a lot of that is off the fact that I put so much effort in the beginning. I put so much goodness into it. I genuinely cared. I genuinely wanted to help people. Because this is another thing. This book, even though it's about Think and Grow Rich, it constantly reminds you it's not all about money. Money is not the be all and end all. Like, there is a certain quality you want to have to your life, but there also has to be a certain amount of sacrifice that you are willing to give. And this whole thing where you're willing to put in more than you're being paid. And again, in the beginning, it wasn't even just about giving stuff away, it was the amount of time I had to give. I remember like breastfeeding at like 3 o'clock in the morning with one hand on my laptop, just doing what I had to do to make sure I could look after my children. And nobody wants to be working on 0 hours sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning with a baby hanging off their boob. But if you are willing to put in that level of effort, i.e. put in a level of work that you are not going to be paid, no one was fucking paying me to do any of that shit at the time. Of course they weren't, it's my own business. But the fact that I was willing to put that effort in, I think has now paid off. That I've now got to the point where, you know, my life workload is incredibly heavy because I have 5 children, not because of the businesses I have. I've actually managed to set up these businesses, and again, it's all relative. I've had to do this because of the children, but I've set up my businesses where I basically have to work like an hour a day, and I get to choose when that hour is, and it's even broken up throughout the day, right? And again, I think that is because in the beginning, I was working 48 hours a day. There aren't 48 hours in a fucking day, but I was working them, right? And it's all just so relative. And this is why this book was so important, because The Secret doesn't teach you that. The Secret doesn't teach you you're going to be working until you want to cry. You're going to work until your eyes feel like they're fucking bleeding and you can't work no more. And this is my problem with today's society and the people that are these law of attraction manifestation gurus, if you will, because they are all full of shit, because no one is willing to tell you what it actually takes to be successful. Essentially, it's just hard fucking work and constantly getting punched in the face by the universe and then just getting back up and going, oh, that didn't hurt, I'll crack on again. That's essentially what it is. But a book would not sell very well if that's all it told you. These courses would not sell if they weren't telling you you can't change your life in an instant. And again, that's why I don't sell these fucking courses, because all of these people are just fucking lying to you. Everything you need to change your life is in this book, but it might take you 10 years to get there. Hell, like I said, I'm 17 years in the making, and I can imagine I'll be on this journey for a lot longer. I mean, life's a journey, isn't it? But there is a lot to learn and there's a lot to take on board, and this book just kind of laid it all out, and for me was the foundation of how I have built my life and now what I live by. This is kind of essentially my Bible. This is how I have chosen to live my life. I've taken everything, all of the concepts in this, even down to this, you know, the man who does more work than he's paid for will soon be paid for more work than he does. That, and do you know what the funny thing is? I think that quote pissed me off, because I don't actually think that was from this book. I could be quoting this wrong now, but I don't think that was written by Napoleon Hill. I think that was written by a man called Wallace D. Wattles, who unfortunately, I know I've given this book to someone and so I don't have it, but there is a book, and this is the next book I want to talk about, that was really fundamental in all of the teachings and everything that I've ever learned. And this was the book called The Science of Getting Rich. Now, this man, Wallace D. Wattles, again, a bit like Napoleon Hill, kind of similar philosophies, but he discovered, you know, all the successful men were doing these similar things. And a lot of the stuff, not that I couldn't do it, but I didn't have the discipline for it. Even now, the most powerful thing you can do is visualization. But I find it really hard to sit there and visualize. I just do. I find it, I can easily picture my own life. I can easily picture stupid fucking situations where I'm arguing with people, but sitting down and imagining whatever I think my dream life is really fucking hard. But these are the things that are very fucking powerful. In fact, there's another book here. If you're looking on YouTube, you'll see this. There's 3 books that were monumental, like the books that changed my life, and it was How to Think and Grow Rich, The Science of Getting Rich, and this book, which is The Master Key System. Now, this book was the hardest for me because this book is, oh, how do I even explain this book? It takes so much discipline. It basically, I think it involved like 45 days of flipping meditation. And again, meditation is another thing I find super duper hard. I do not have the discipline. My mind wanders too much. I don't, and they say, don't they? They say everybody should meditate for 10 minutes a day, except those who can't. They should meditate for an hour. And I'm just like, I am a perfect candidate for meditation, but for whatever reason, I don't know, never got on too well with it. I've always promoted it and I support it, and I think you should be doing it if you can, but I just personally cannot myself. But this book, again, just highlights all the things that if you do them and you do them consistently, you can basically change your whole entire life. Like you can mold and shape your reality. And like I said, it's not that simple, but it is that simple. And these books really just help to break it down. Now, I wouldn't advise getting this Master Key System unless you are already well versed in The Secret and How to Think and Grow Rich. It might not make much sense to you, and I don't know. And again, it takes a lot of discipline. If you don't have 6 months to dedicate to this book, don't do it. But this is what I always say, and why I don't understand why people think it's so easy to just manifest all this great stuff. Anything worth having is going to take some fucking effort, right? Nothing that comes easy is worth having, ever. Easy come, easy go. Is that not the saying? The more effort you put into something, the longer it is going to last, all right? And so this book, where again, I was such a little fast hothead. When I got this book, I was like, I haven't got 6 months to sit down and meditate. I never did it. But trust me, if I had the 6 months to sit down and meditate, I would probably be a billionaire right now. You probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast because I'd just be living on the ocean somewhere on my own private island, right? Again, it's all relative. I do often think sometimes, you know, I've said this before, if you get everything you ever wanted, would you even be happy? Like, if I now, imagine I just open my bank account and I've got £1 billion in there, like, well, that, in my eyes, I've completed life. Well, what the fuck am I going to do then? I saw someone the other day, interestingly, and it was that bad Barbie girl, and I felt really sorry for her. I know we're all like, everyone's taught us to hate her or whatever, but she's just another fucking lost kid, like, who's been taken advantage of. But she was saying, she said, I'm bored. She said, I've got 75 million in the bank. I've bought all the handbags. I've been all the places. I've done all the things. I'm bored. And it just made me think, God, like, what would you really do if you had achieved everything you think you want to achieve? You'd probably be fucking bored too. Because as much as I find all of this a struggle at the moment, it's still a reason to get out of bed. And I think that's the one thing people, like a lot of people lack, is purpose. Like, as much as I moan about my kids, and literally at least once a day, I'm like, what the fuck have I done? Oh, they're still my fucking purpose, and they give me a reason to get up and breathe and continue and carry on, and probably are the reason I haven't fucking jumped off a bridge, let's be real. So, I don't know, you need purpose in your life. And I don't know, that can't look like a child for everybody, but you need something to do. I'll never forget, I read this awful story once. This woman, her whole family had been in a car crash. I'm talking daughter, son-in-law, grandkids, I think one of her kids, like everyone is fucking wiped out. They all died in this car crash. And she was being interviewed, and someone said to her, like, how do you even continue after that? And she said she started volunteering, and she realised her happiness didn't actually have to be her own for her to be happy. She could help other people be happy and be happy from that. And that's what she did. She would just volunteer, and she helped make other people's lives great, and that gave her purpose, and that kept her going. And that is essentially what you need. You know, I have this argument with Rocco all the time. He's always like, oh, my life's so hard. I'm like, your life's not hard, you just lack purpose. You've got no fucking reason to get out of bed every day, so why would you? And then when you lay in bed all day, then come all the problems. Then the depression sets in and the bed rot and all of that. You need a purpose. Anyway, I think I've said that enough. But back to these books, I don't know, these books, like I said, The Secret was the first thing I read, and then it led me into these books. And I would say these 3 books probably changed my life the most. I live by these books, and a lot of the stuff I've learned in here, every day, like, carries me through every day. And I don't know, there's a lot of the things I don't do, but I know if I did do it would add even more power. But like I said, everything has a time and a place. Maybe this is where I'm meant to be right now, which is why I don't have the energy to meditate myself into another fucking dimension, right? Because I'm not actually supposed to right now. And that's okay. Like, I do think everything has its time and its place. But I'm going to link these books. They're on my Amazon page. Most of these books, fun fact, after 75 years, a book becomes public domain, meaning Napoleon Hill, who's dead anyway, he can no longer make money from this book. So even though I love books, so I want hard copies of everything, so I bought this copy, and in my bookcase it stays. But you can get this free. This will be free somewhere in the public domain, because it's essentially just available as a PDF now, and whoever sells this book doesn't own it, basically. They're just taking advantage of the fact after 75 years, writers lose their rights. Anyway, I'm going to make those available. Check those out. I don't know if I'm going to do a whole show on it. Maybe I'll just put it in the bio, but there's a couple of things that I've watched that have really helped me. There's a man, actually, funny enough, I've got this little book here called Feeling is the Secret, and it's by Neville Goddard. Now, if you have a man in your life, or you know, you've got sons like me, he's a really good guy to get them to listen to. He's got a few there's one thing in particular, like a speech he gave, that is really life-changing, actually. I'm gonna link it in the bio. I'd like you to have a listen, but especially if you've got like men in your life, get them to listen to it. Get them to start understanding their power. I mean, this is a podcast for another day, but I think the real pandemic at the moment is the state of men. Men are just not men, and I think it's because men are not okay, but we all deserve to be okay, and we all deserve to know our power. And please remember as well, I only do all of this because when I realised the world was actually fucked, run by a bunch of potentially alien reptile psychopaths, I thought, how can I actually be of help? Because it's not very helpful going around screaming that to people, because I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with that information now? You know, the Queen's a lizard, and how are you going to do? You can't do nothing about that. Understanding as well that life is in fact like Monsters Inc. If you've ever seen Monsters Inc., what's happening is monsters are going into children's room at night, scaring the shit out of them, or scaring the scream out of them. And when these kids scream, they're actually capturing these screams in chambers and using them as energy to fuel their little monster world. And that is exactly what is going on in this world. All right, you have got these elite people who are using our fear, our anxiety, our sheer fucking terror at the state of the world, and they are feeding off that frequency. And that might sound a little bit woo-woo and wild, but that is exactly what they're doing, which is why I have tried to come and be the person who says, hey, this is how you get your happy on. This is how you get your control of this situation. This is how you make your life better. Because I tell you, the scariest thing to them people is all of us waking up, realising our fucking power, realising we're actually fucking free, and realising they can't do a damn fucking thing to us, especially when our frequency is as high as this. Anyway, that's why I'm here. That's what I've always trying to do for the last couple of years, and what I'm going to continue to do. So do me and yourself a favour. Go and invest in one of these books, or find the free PDF online. Invest in yourself and start to understand the power you actually wield, okay? Because trust me, it's a fucking lot. Anyway, I'm going to go. I know this has been a bit shorter than normal, but I've had a fucking enough. All right, I want to go and get into bed, smoke some weed and order some food and enjoy the last few hours of peace that I have of this weekend. Anyway, I am sending you all the love and luck with your building a better life for yourself. And I will see you next week with, I mean, I don't even know what at this point, but I'll be back next week because, as we've established, consistency is key. Anyway, I love you all very much. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you soon. Mwah.